Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yasodanandana Prajajana Ranjana. Yasodanandana Prajajana Ranjana. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yasodanandana Prajajana Ranjana. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajakacharya Stotarasatasi Simad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajakacharya Stotarasatasi Simad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaja Ki. Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki. ISKCON Founder Acharya's Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Giradhar Shivasati Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Go Gopinath Shamakun Radhakun Giri Govardhana Ki. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki. Navadvip Mayapur Dham Ki. Jamunamai Ki. Bhakti Devi Ki. Srimati Tulsi Maharani Ki. Brihat Mridanga Transcendental Book Distribution Ki. Prasadam Distribution Ki. Harinam Sankirtana Ki. Nudwarka Dhamma Ki. Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki. Nitai Gaura Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the lotus feet of Sri Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. So today is the auspicious appearance of His Divine Grace, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And so I'm going to read a few passages from the Seventh Goswami book. I'll read the family lineage, a portion of that, then a summary of life and qualities of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, portion of his daily schedule, and then some letter excerpts by Srila Prabhupada and excerpts from Srila Prabhupada's books. So I'll read some portions of that. So this is the family lineage. Srila Sacinandana Bhaktivinoda Thakur was born on September 2nd, 1838, on Sunday, in an ancient village of Burnagar, located in the Nadia district of West Bengal. He was the third son of Ananda Chandra Datta and Jagat Mohini Devi. It can be said that he was born with a silver spoon in his mouth, as both his mother and father came from illustrious and wealthy families. However, he suffered great miseries and trials throughout his youth. He was given the name of Kedaranath, a name of Lord Shiva, by his father. Kedaranath. Thank you. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur wrote a book in 1876 called Datta Vamsha Mala, in which he detailed the genealogy of his father's family line. He also explains in his autobiography, "I was born a descendant of Purushottama Datta, a Kanyak Kubja Kayasta, among the 5 Kayastas who came to the Goda region at the invitation of King Adisura, namely Akarananda Ghosh, Dasarath Vasu, Kalidas Mitra, Dasarath Guha, and Purushottama Dasa. Sri Purushottama Datta was the foremost. His community was settled in Balagram. His community was settled at Balagram. Later on, some individual in his lineage settled in Andulagram and became known as the chief of the Kayasta community. Also in his line was Kaja Krishnananda Datta, the father of the great Vaishnavacharya Narottama Das Thakur, and a great devotee of Lord Nityananda, who often received that Lord in his home. Kedaranatha was thus later called the 7th son of Raja Krishnananda. So I know these are a lot of names, perhaps names we haven't heard before, but at the same time important for us to hear and very purifying even to hear these great personalities' names. Raja Krishnananda's grandson was Govinda Sharanan Datta. The Sultan of Delhi once gave Govinda Sharana some land on the banks of the Ganges in West Bengal. On that land, Govinda Sharan established the town of Govindapur. This town was later joined with two neighboring towns, Kaligat and Sutanuti, to form the city now known as Calcutta, a city of tremendous importance to the British Empire. When the British built Fort William at Govindapur, Govindasharan and his family were given the land in exchange, and the Datta family moved to Hatkola, where they began a settlement and became known as Hatkola Dattas. I'm going to drop down a paragraph here. In his autobiography, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur describes his family and mother in the following manner. My father, Ananda Chandra Datta Mahasaya, was very religious, straightforward, and detached from sensual things. Regarding his beauty, many people used to say that in Calcutta there was no one at that time who was as handsome. My mother was called Srimati Jagat Mohini. She was possessed of intellect, straightforwardness, and devotion to my father. It can be said that there was no one like her. His mother was the daughter of Ishwara Chandra Mitra Mastopi, a descendant of the noble Romeshwara Mitra Mustopi family. Her father was a man of immense wealth and generous disposition. So as I'm reading this, one thought that comes to mind is that here, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, we can see he came from quite a affluent family. However, it never affected Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur the way in today's society, someone who has a lot of money, it may distract them from the process of Krishna consciousness. But we'll see how actually he utilized his wealth and all of his wonderful qualities to preach Krishna consciousness. So I wanted to go on next to the summary and life and qualities of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And Srila Prabhupada, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, he gives a summary appreciation of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur in a translation of this is from a lecture given on Gaur Purnima in 1969. It was the desire of Bhaktivinoda Thakur to spread the life and precepts of Lord Chaitanya in the Western countries. So with this in view of publishing the book Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, his life and precepts, he sent copies to various universities' libraries. And one of the copies was found in the McGill University in Montreal. After 72 years, this book was found in the library by one of our students, and he brought it to me. From a materialistic point of view, I was born in a different family, and Bhaktivinoda Thakur belonged to a different family, and my spiritual master, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, happened to be the fifth son of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Although at home, Bhaktivinoda Thakur was actually the spiritual master of my spiritual master, still he recommended Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. When he was a young man, about 18 years old, that you go to Gorakishore Das Babaji and become initiated by him. Bhaktivinoda Thakur was a magistrate, and my Guru Maharaj belonged to a very respectable family. So he narrated the story before us when he was recommended to be initiated by Gorakishore Das Babaji Maharaj. This Gorakishore Babaji Maharaj used to respect Bhaktivinoda Thakur as his guide. Therefore, we take it that in our disciplic succession, that Bhaktivinoda Thakur guided Gorakishore Das Babaji, and Gorakishore Das Babaji Maharaj initiated my spiritual master. Therefore, Bhaktivinoda Thakur is accepted as the spiritual master of the spiritual master of my spiritual master. He is, in the fourth generation, Grand Man Spiritual Master. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Sankirtan movement, which Bhaktivinoda desired in 1896, and somehow or another, coincidentally, I do not know what was his desire. I was also born in that year. And by Krishna's desire, I came to the disciplic succession to Saraswati Thakur, and he asked me to go to the Western countries and preach Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings. The spiritual line of understanding is different from the materialistic point of view. The idea is that I was born in a different family, and Guru Maharaj was born in a different family. Bhaktivinoda was at that time a magistrate, a government servant. By Lord Chaitanya's desire, we have come in that same line of the disciplic succession. What was taught by Bhaktivinoda Thakur in 1896 was that these teachings of Lord Chaitanya should be spread in the Western countries by chance or coincidence it is now happening. We should take it for granted that whatever is happening at the present moment, by my humble endeavor, it is all by the grace of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Therefore, on this auspicious ceremony of Lord Chaitanya's appearance day, it will be greatly beneficial for us to hear from Bhaktivinoda Thakur what he wrote 72 years before. And after 72 years, being a humble servant in that line, I am trying to distribute his teachings. There is a spiritual coincidence, and we should take advantage of Bhaktivinoda Thakur's book. Practically, this Chaitanya movement was, of course, Lord Chaitanya inaugurated this movement 500 years ago. And after that, so many pseudo-Chaitanyaites depreciated the whole thing. But the Chaitanya movement, in its pure form, as it is, was restarted by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. We should take it that Bhaktivinoda Thakur was the origin of the Krishna consciousness movement in its pure form. Bhaktivinoda wrote almost 100 books. Just imagine, 100 books. He was a very responsible officer, a magistrate, and he was a grihasta. He also had many children. Altogether, he had 10 children. And he had to take care of children, the office of magistrate, and extra religious work. He was made superintendent of the temple of Jagannath because the government knew that Bhaktivinoda Thakur was a highly advanced religious person. So as we're listening here to all the responsibilities of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, it comes to mind that when we see these great personalities who are so focused on the mission of preaching Krishna consciousness, on the mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, it's incredible how much responsibility they can take on and how much they can get done. Srila Prabhupada, of course, was another perfect example of that. He had many responsibilities in his life. And in just 11 years, look what he did, spreading Krishna consciousness all over the world and writing so many books. Wonderful personalities for us to use as examples. Whenever there was some religious question, he was consulted. In spite of all his responsibilities as an officer or as a family man with so many children, he executed his family life very nicely, or else he could not have produced a child such as Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. At the same time, he served the Supreme Lord in so many ways. That is the beauty. He has written so many books, and in spite of so many cumbersome duties. That is the beauty of his life. He would come home from the office in the evening and take his meals and go to bed. That was his program. And he'd sleep from 8 to 12 at night, 4 hours, and then get up and write books until morning. That was his program. I'm going to read a little bit about his schedule. Lalita Prasad Thakur, in his notes on his father's life, describes the Thakur's daily schedule while he was staying in Jagannath Puri. He was never idle, being always engaged in the service of the Lord. Between 7:30 and 8 p.m., he would go to bed. He would then rise just before 10 p.m. So just prior to this, I said he would sleep, he would take rest at 8 and wake up at 12, so that's 4 hours. But here, while he was staying in Jagannath Puri, he slept even less. He would sleep approximately 2 hours. Between 7:30 and 8, he would go to bed, so 2 to 2.5 hours. So at 10 p.m., he would light his oil lamp and write books until 4. So for approximately 6 hours, he would write books. Then he would again rest for a maximum of an hour and a half. At 4:30 a.m., he would wash his hands, face, sit down, and chant on his beads. He never showed his beads to anyone, but would chant on them consistently as time permitted. At 7 a.m., he answered all correspondence. At 7:30 a.m., read various religious and philosophical works. And at 8:30 a.m., he received visitors, if any, or else continued to read until 9:30. At that time, he would walk back and forth on the veranda of his home, contemplating different religious questions and solving them in his mind. Sometimes he would solve them aloud, as if preaching to some unseen guests. So as I read that, I'm thinking how we speak to many people daily. We might be at book distribution, we may be out in public, Harinam, here in the restaurant, here at the Dom. So it's a good practice to follow what Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur did. Think about the questions that people will ask us at any given time. And in your own mind, go through. We go through the answer. And even we can say that out loud. We can say the question and we can give the answer. This way, when someone approaches us and asks us the question, we can immediately answer the question because we've practiced it so many times. So continuing, he would rest briefly from 9:30 to 9:45 a.m., then take bath and breakfast, which usually consisted of, listen to this, a half a quart of milk, 2 chapatis, and some fruit. At 9:55 a.m., the Thakur would don his uniform and leave for court in his carriage. As a magistrate, he wore a coat and pants. On his neck were 6 strands of large tulsi beads. He was resolute in his court decisions and decide a case immediately, not tolerating any humbug. He did his business and left. He shaved his head monthly and never cared what anyone thought of it. The lawyers and Englishmen were astounded by the Thakur's capacity for work. At 10 a.m., court began. He would hear between 30 and 50 cases per day. Yet he finished by 1 p.m. What took other magistrates 1.5 hours, he finished in 5 minutes. He took another 2 minutes to write the judgment in detail. Some of his British supervisors became envious and tried to discourage him, but he was not affected. At 1 p.m., he went home, refreshed himself, and then returned to work from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. Every evening after his court duties, Bhaktivinoda Thakur would translate some Sanskrit religious work into Bengali by dictating it to a secretary. Then there was an evening bath and meal consisting of a little rice, 2 chapatis, and another half quart of milk. So it appears from what I'm reading here that Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur would eat 4 chapatis, he would drink a quart of milk, some fruit, and some rice. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur worked with a pocket watch so that every evening everything he did was on a schedule. Despite his heavy domestic and official responsibilities, Bhaktivinoda Thakur's every moment was embellished with an intense desire to render service to the Lord. So that's the end of the chapter of his daily schedule. I'll just read some excerpts from letters and then some excerpts from his books. So this is from a letter written by Srila Prabhupada to Janardhan on April the 18th, 1968. And I'm going to finish class at 8:30. The statements of Thakur Bhaktivinoda are as good as scriptures because he is a liberated person. Generally, the spiritual master comes from the group of such eternal associates of the Lord. But anyone who follows the principles of such ever-liberated persons is as good as one in the above-mentioned group. The gurus from nature study are accepted as such on the principle that an elevated person in Krishna consciousness does not accept anyone as a disciple, but he accepts everyone as expansions of his guru. That is very high position, called Mahabhagavata. Just like Radharani sometimes thinks a subordinate of hers as her teacher to understand devotion of Krishna. A person who is liberated Charya and Guru cannot commit any mistake. This is a letter written to Rupanuga Prabhu in August of 1968. I am so pleased upon you that you are showing the example of an ideal householder. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur was also a householder, but he lived in such perfect Krishna consciousness that he is better than many sannyasis like us. So far as I am concerned, I could not live like Bhaktivinoda Thakur because I was disgusted with my family members, and I was obliged to give up my family life. We take it for granted that we have dedicated our life for Krishna's service in three ways, namely in our body, in our mind, and in our words. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has sung in a poetry that my mind, my body, and my home is surrendered unto you. So a grahasta or householder like you are also Tridandi, a renunciate. I'll read one more letter, excerpt. This is a letter to Satsarup in 1968, September 24th. So you should try to understand these principles of married life and use your discretion. You should not imitate great personalities like Bhaktivinoda Thakur, but you must follow his footprints. But it is not always possible to have the same success as great personalities like Bhaktivinoda Thakur achieved. So in all circumstances, you should try to follow the footsteps of authorities, but never imitate them. And finally, I'll read some excerpts from Srila Prabhupada's books, where he mentions Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Lila, 4:170, we should be prepared to do anything and everything to please the Lord, even at the risk of violating the Vedic principles or ethical laws. That is the standard of love of Godhead. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur warns us in his connection that we should not mistakenly think the idea of giving up everything implies the renunciation of duties necessary in relation to the body and mind. Even such duties are not sense gratification if they are undertaken in a spirit of service to Krishna. This is from Chaitanya Charitamrita, 7:121 from the purport. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains in his Vedanta Sutra of Srila Vyasadeva, it is definitely stated that all cosmic manifestations result from transformations of various energies of the Lord. Sankaracharya, however, has not accepted the energy of the Lord, thinks that this is the Lord who is transformed. He has taken many clear statements from the Vedic literature and twisted them to try to prove that if the Lord or the absolute truth were transformed, his oneness would be disturbed. Thus, he has accused Srila Vyasadeva of being mistaken. In developing his philosophy of monism, therefore, he has established Vivarta Vada, or Mayavadi theory of illusion. Srila Prabhupada writes in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Lila, number 8. This is in the introduction. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur warns that artificial displays of the bodily symptoms called astas sattvika vikara, that is also another offense. One should seriously and sincerely continue to chant the Panchatattva names Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar, Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda. All these acharyas will bestow their causeless mercy upon a devotee and gradually purify his heart. When he is actually purified, automatically he will experience ecstasy in chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. And I will read one more. This also is from the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Leela, number 10, purport from verse 122. At present, however, by the grace of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, his cult is being propagated all over the world. And it is most probable that the future history of Lord Chaitanya's movement, Europeans, Americans, Canadians, Australians, South Americans, Asians, and people from all over the world will be celebrated as devotees of Lord Chaitanya. The International Society for Krishna Consciousness has already constructed a big temple at Mayapur, Navadvip, which is being visited by devotees from all parts of the world, as foretold by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and anticipated by Sri Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So I'll stop reading there. Does anybody have any short points? Anything they would like to say about Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur? Okay, Prabhu. So thank you very much for attending class today here in New Dwarka and on the internet. I hope you all have a wonderful day in Krishna consciousness. All glories to Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Jai.
It was a sincere service of Bhaktivinoda Thakur.